And just as Moses lifted up the serpent in the wilderness, so must the Son of Man be lifted up. Mostly we don't like snakes, and we may feel for the Hebrew people caught up in an invasion of the slithery creatures out there in the wilderness. In fact, it is easy to identify with the grumbling of the people of God in the wilderness as they complained to God and to Moses about their conditions. I guess most of us have had a few complaints as well during the up-downs of the past year. Not slithery snakes in our case, but a pesky little virus causing mayhem. We're good at complaining, I think. It has been and is hard going, and we all have our list of complaints and restrictions or lack of restrictions. And like those wanderers long ago, we are hard to satisfy. Like them, we too may have left the worst behind, but we have not yet got to that promised place of safety, and there still seems a long way to go. Not everything resolves itself quickly, and we all become impatient. In the Old Testament story, people were infected by poisonous snakes and were dying. The passage tells of the way that Moses erected a bronze serpent on a pole, and if people looked at it, they were healed. Magic? Hocus pocus? Or could it have been a reminder to face up to their fear? To trust the God who had led them out of slavery? To look outwards rather than inwards upon themselves? To renew their perspective? Did they need at this time a visible sign to direct their hearts and minds to God? To recognize that it was God who healed them when they trusted in him and when they walked in his way. God showing himself as a God of love, but also as a holy God who requires his people to be holy. The sinfulness, the impatience, the turning from God, going their own way, which was the downfall of the Israelites all those years ago, is a pattern we can all recognize. People whose life and unity are spoilt because of wrong attitudes, wrong thoughts, and wrong priorities. Food for thought on our Lenten journey as we move on to the Gospel, and we find John recording Jesus himself referring to this incident in the desert. And just as Moses lifted up the serpent in the wilderness, so must the Son of God be lifted up, that whoever believes in him may have eternal life. And I reflect that the writer of the Gospel according to John lived and died at the end of the 1st century as a faithful Jew who knew the history of his own people. He told the story of Jesus of Nazareth from within the context of a religious tradition that encouraged people to see beyond the symbols and stories to the God to whom the symbols and stories point. God so loved the world, he writes, that he gave his only Son, that all who believe in him may have eternal life. And I further reflect that John also tells us that when asked why he had come, Jesus said, I have come that you might have life and have it abundantly. Abundant life, eternal life, life which has no beginning and no end, a mystery beyond our comprehension. Stretched out upon the cross like the bronze snake stretched up upon the uplifted pole, Jesus is the source of our life instead of death. If we look to him and not to ourselves or to the world, we shall be healed or saved, made whole, know peace, not a superficial peace that wavers with the wind, but a deep inner peace, a constant resource. This is what, as Christians, we sometimes call salvation. Perhaps we could say in very simple terms that this means being safe in God. The Hebrew verb to lift up is the same word used later in the Gospel to describe Jesus lifted up, ascended into heaven. And so we have a double picture here, Jesus on the cross, but also Jesus in glory. The two are inextricably linked. The cross was the path to glory. A reminder, if we need it, that Christians are not promised this easy life, but we are promised God with us in the midst of it. Not for us a bronze snake, but a Roman cross, for God so loved the world. God coming to us in the Christ child, weak and vulnerable, even to death, but also a God who in a risen Christ is lifted up in glory, offering to us new life, hope, and healing, body, mind, and spirit, a total wholeness. Such wholeness brings freedom. It is a freedom rooted in the security of God's presence. We are safe in Him and set free to do and to be what God has made us to be. A freedom to attempt new things, strength to accept our physical limitations, courage to face the unknown future, whatever it holds, with serenity, the ability to lay aside our anxieties and to leave behind our hang-ups. We are invited to face our fears and anxieties and lift them up to God. When we do, God will lead us through the desolate and deserted places of our lives to a place of new life and hope and blessing. On this Mothering Sunday, then, a good message to ponder, to live and to share.